radical. Fundamental principles of freedom, national self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Monday, September 23rd. It's going to be an interesting show today. I am at a WeWorks, actually in the WeWorks where the Ayn Rand Center Israel is based. So I am in the heart of Tel Aviv. I think Hezbollah was aiming for our building this afternoon. They just missed us, but like not by that much actually, 50 kilometers maybe to the east. They hit, well, most of the missiles didn't make the ground, but the ones that did almost hit some Arab villages in the West Bank. So the aim is off. All right, let's see. What do we want to? We're going to talk about the situation in Israel today. There's a sense in which you could say today was the first day where I really got the sense that Israel is serious about this war, at least in the north, and that it's, at least to some degree, has its act together. So we'll talk about that. I'm energized by what Israel is doing, and we'll see. There's still many steps to go, but today, after what they did last week, today was pretty exciting what they did. Let's see. I've also got a bunch of other topics that we can cover. A lot of this depends, as always, on whether you have questions, how many questions, what you guys want to talk about. Of course, you can determine the shape and direction of the show by asking questions on the Super Chat. You know the drill. You know how to do it. Those of you who don't want to ask questions on the Super Chat but still want to support the show financially can use a sticker. If you don't know what a sticker is, just click on that $ at the bottom of the chat here, and it'll give you instructions as to what it is. What did I just do? I closed my own window with the show. Let me reopen it. It's also there's a massive television here. I think it's like an 85-inch television with me on it, broadcasting as well. So I've got me on multiple screens. All right, and they're watching all your comments on the chat, so you can't sneak anything by. Everything's being broadcast here. Let's see. I know it's a little earlier than usual for you guys, so I apologize for that, but it's late over here. It's already 8:30 at night over here, and I figured we'd get this going. I just completed an hour and 15-minute kind of open Q&A with a group of about, I think, 16 or 17 Israeli objectivists here at a conference room, and we figured we'd do that, and then I would go right into a show. I think they've all gone to get something to eat, but at some point they're going to come back, and we'll have a live audience here of Israelis listening to the show, and you guys can ask questions. All right, let's summarize where we are. I think we've talked about the Beeper attack, which basically took out about 4,000 plus Hezbollah fighters of various ranks all over Lebanon, but also including in Syria and elsewhere. It wasn't just the beepers, it was other communication devices, other electronic devices that also exploded. One of the greatest intelligence, offensive military feats in all of human history, I think. Truly an amazing thing. And I said at the time, that is a great setup for an all-out war and an all-out attack of Israel on the Hezbollah and on Lebanon. That turned out to be phase one. Phase two, and I don't know if Israel knew this was going to be a phase two, or if it just got lucky, if you will. Phase two was a bombing of a meeting of senior Hezbollah members, senior Hezbollah commanders in Beirut, 2 days ago, where not only did they kill the guy who was the chief of operations for the Hezbollah militarily, but also managed to kill the entire leadership of the Radwan force, which is the special forces of the Hezbollah, the best trained, the ones who did a lot of the fighting in Syria, got a lot of experience fighting and the ones that were most feared of all the Hezbollah fighting forces, they were the most feared, and basically their entire leadership was wiped out. So now you've got basically the entire leadership of Hamas. Remember, Israel had already killed the former head of operations. They'd already killed many of the Hamas leadership, Hezbollah leadership. And basically, the entire Hezbollah leadership has been wiped out, at least at the very top, and even one layer or two layers beneath that. Over the last 11 months, the way things have been going is Israel, Hezbollah sends missiles to Israel. Most of them don't land. Almost all of them are knocked out of the air. Casualties on the Israeli side are minimal. And then Israel retaliates by bombing a few places in Lebanon, weapons depots, assassinating Hamas fighters, about 500 Hezbollah fighters. About 500 Hezbollah fighters were killed in this way through basically targeted assassinations or targeted bombings of particular Hezbollah facilities over the last 11 months. And yesterday there was significant bombing of more Hezbollah weapons depots, and it was pretty intense. About 150 targets were targeted, and major explosions, major fires. They hit major. But today there was a real shift strategically, and this is really phase 3 of what they're doing. Israel basically today told civilians in South Lebanon to leave their homes, to leave South Lebanon. The way they described it as, it turns out, and there's some good animations on Twitter, and I'm sure on other social media we can find this, it turns out that Hezbollah has been hiding not just the weapons themselves, but the launches, the weapons and the launches, inside people's homes. They basically went with this kind of deal to many of the civilians in South Lebanon. They said, look, these are mainly Shiites, but I think others as well. Look, we'll build you a new house. New house, everything. We'll spend the money. We'll build you a new, nice, big house. And you have to dedicate a portion of it to put in a, ballistic missile that we can launch at any time from your home. We'll take it out of the garage, launch it, and sneak it back into the garage, right? And then load it up again. And a lot of people, hundreds, maybe even thousands of people took them up on this. And there were massive storage of missiles and launches and drones, weaponized drones, in people's homes in South Lebanon. So what Israel did today is they basically took over the cell phone network in Lebanon, and they sent a recorded message to the cell phones of thousands of Lebanese, basically telling them, if in your home there happens to be weapons of Hezbollah, or if your neighbor might be storing some weapons of Hezbollah, you should probably get out of town. You should probably get away, because we're going to blow them all up. They didn't say that, but that was implied. These things, when they blow up, this is a big explosion, because not only is the missile blowing up, but then the missile that it's hitting is blowing up. And if you've seen the pictures on Twitter, these are fireworks. So at some point they recommended that people leave to a distance of at least 1 kilometer. Well, the Lebanese got the message. And today what you saw was convoys of cars, massive traffic jams, leaving South Lebanon, going north of the Litani River. And that was in the morning. And Israel started bombing individual homes which had these weapons in them. And you could see secondary explosions and third explosions, and all of this was going on. You also saw a significant number of casualties, many more casualties today in Lebanon than we've seen, certainly in the northern front, since the beginning of the war. As much as some of the, maybe even more than any day in Gaza. So we're talking about hundreds of people dying today in South Lebanon because they didn't leave their home, or because they're Hezbollah fighters and they were engaged in activities related to trying to bomb Israel. Let's see. So that happened in the morning. hundreds of targets were, yesterday everybody's impressed by the fact that 150, 200 targets were hit. Today, overall, in an entire day, the last number I saw was that Israel hit 1,100 different targets. 1,100 targets were hit during the day today. But in the afternoon, the Israeli military basically expanded the attack to the Bekaa Valley. Now, the Bekaa Valley is further north and further east of what's typically called South Lebanon, which is the area beneath this river called the Litani. The area between the Litani and the Israeli border is typically referred to as southern Lebanon. The Bekaa Valley, if you think, is northeast of that. And it's a large valley. It's a valley in which, in 1982, last time Israel went into Lebanon in a big way, there were major battles there. The Syrians have occupied the Bekaa Valley. There were battles there with the Syrians. Today, this was expanded. The Bekaa Valley is further away from Israel. The missiles being stored in people's homes are more likely to be cruise missiles or ballistic missiles. These are missiles that can go a far longer range than the missiles that are typically held in the south of Lebanon. And Israel went after those. All afternoon and early evening, they were bombing these locations. Again, the number of casualties on the Lebanese side is in the hundreds. And the number of missiles destroyed, I don't know, probably in the thousands. The number of launches are probably in the hundreds. This is a major operation. I mean, basically it was wave after wave after wave of F-16s and F-15s, I think primarily. I'm sure the F-35s were there as well. Waves after waves of Israeli bombing, very accurate bombing, targeted at Hezbollah infrastructure, targeted at Hezbollah weapon systems, and just total destruction and total devastation of them. Now, at the same time, early on, Hezbollah, you could tell, was in some way caught off guard, and they tried to retaliate, but their missiles went away and unfocused, and they weren't very far. They were primarily, again, the usual tit-for-tat type missiles that hit the Northern Galilee and the Golan Heights. Then towards evening, they got organized. It appears they got organized. And I know that air raid shelters, air raid sirens sounded at my parents' place, just outside of Haifa, or on kind of the northern slopes of Haifa, so really facing Lebanon, straight facing Lebanon, earlier this evening. You can find, right now online, you can find pictures of the Iron Dome working above Haifa, where I was the day before yesterday, and where my parents live. And so I don't think there were any impact. Nothing hit the ground. But it must be scary for the citizens in Haifa to see these bombs. They're experiencing now what southern Israel has experienced for many, 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 many years, sadly. That is missiles heading towards them and watching the Iron Dome take them out for the most part. So it seems like Hezbollah got their act a little together. They still have some missiles and some accuracy. They also launched some missiles in the direction of Tel Aviv. That is the distance they got right, but they missed to the east. And they, as I said, they hit some targets in the West Bank rather than in Israel proper. Again, most of those. Now, what's interesting, I think this is true. I read this in one of the reports. Israel does not have an Iron Dome to protect the West Bank. The idea is Hezbollah and Hamas don't want to kill West Bank Arabs. These are Palestinians that are supposed to be their people. They're supposed to be all one. So the Iron Dome did not protect. So there was actually a lot of hits in the West Bank. They just didn't hit anything, any humans. They hit open ground. But anything that approached Tel Aviv, any approached a little bit further west, were knocked out of the sky. Again, as far as I know, I haven't seen any evidence that any of the missiles targeting Haifa hit any buildings. I will say that the missiles targeting Haifa were clearly targeting civilians. This was not targeting the massive industrial infrastructure that Israel has in the Bay of Haifa. This was targeting the Carmel. This is targeting the area of where people live. Just to give you a sense of what life is like, right? And it is interesting to be in Israel right now. Did I freeze?
No, I'm just
Oh, you're playing around with it. Okay, you scared me there because I'm now traumatized by freezing. Yesterday, the biggest hospital in the north of Israel, it's called Rambam. It's a hospital my father worked in for decades, for many, many years. He was a vice dean in a medical school and was the headed a department there. Last night, Haifa, this morning, they released 200 patients who could be released home. And then they took all the patients in the hospital and they took them underground. So the hospital in Haifa basically has a twin, a smaller twin. So they built layers of the hospital under the ground in basically a protective shelter. And today they moved all those patients underground. The doctors and the nurses are all working underground, taking care of those patients. Because it's a smaller facility, they released 200. But also, they during the day, they've been transporting people from other hospitals in northern Israel to this facility that's underground in Rambam. So imagine hospitals in Israel have to think about what happens when we get bombarded, right? And this is a day-to-day activity. And the reason for that is because, again, the country is tiny. I don't think many people have a concept of how small this country really is. So Rambam has underground hospital. Hooray for them. I mean, it's amazing that they have that ability. And the patients are going to be safe because they're going to be underground. Today was very tense in Haifa. There was this real sense that Hezbollah will attack Haifa. On the other hand, you drive down to Tel Aviv, and Tel Aviv is a little further, still within missile range of Hezbollah. But if you drive around Tel Aviv, people are sitting in restaurants, coffee shops, and they're living their lives. And life goes on. I'm sure there'll be nightclubs tonight and bars open tonight, and people will continue living. And there is this real sense that even though Israel's tiny, living in the south of Israel is very different during, October 7th, for example. Living in the south of Israel is very different around Gaza than living in the north of Israel. It's very different than living in Tel Aviv or Jerusalem. The dynamics are so different. And they all have different characters, but the dynamics during warfare are incredibly different. So it's a really interesting country. I encourage everybody to visit. It's definitely worth visiting. Not now, when things calm down, but you should come. Anyway, so when Israel bombed the Bekaa Valley, it also did the same thing. It told people to leave. It told people that if they have weapons in their house, or if their neighbors have weapons, or if anybody in the neighborhood has weapons, they should leave. And there have been convoys out of the Bekaa Valley. Indeed, Lebanese Department of Education has announced no school in the next few days, and they are turning the schools into shelters for all the refugees, if you will, from South Lebanon and from the Bekaa Valley who are escaping the bombardment of Lebanon. So this is stage 3. And my expectation is that this stage might continue another day or two. That is, I would expect another round of massive, dramatic bombings tomorrow. And then, and this is the big question, right? And then at some point, whether this is sometime tomorrow, whether this is Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, I expect troops to start entering Lebanon and Israel to occupy a segment of Lebanon up until to the Litani River. In the very north and the northeast, maybe a piece of the Bekaa Valley there, where Litani River goes east-west and then goes straight north, right? It goes straight up. I don't know exactly what the borders are, but Israel is very familiar with this terrain. It occupied this terrain in the 90s. It left southern Lebanon in 2000. So it's very familiar with that terrain. And then there'll be a big question, what happens then, right? Once it occupies southern Lebanon, what happens then? My guess is that the Biden administration is already jumping up and down and frantic and crazy. Escalation. It's the new word that I've learned to hate. And they're trying to cut deals in the background. I don't think it's anybody to deal with. Oh, one thing I missed about today. One thing they did later this afternoon or early evening is there was one last commander in the Hezbollah command structure, the head of the southern district of Hezbollah, that is responsible for all of southern Lebanon, Israel assassinated him tonight. They assassinated him in Beirut. So they bombed another building in Beirut and got him. So basically, Israel knows where they are. They know their intelligence is so good right now that they know where everybody within the Hezbollah hierarchy is. My guess is they know where Nasrallah is, but I think Nasrallah's a coward. He hasn't appeared live in an event in many years because he's afraid. And my guess is Nasrallah is deep in a tunnel, in a bunker somewhere that Israel probably can't get to. But we'll see. You never know, right? Who knows? He might have, maybe he's turned off all the electronics and turned off the lights because who knows? Maybe the bulb will blow up in his face. But they know where these people are. And I wish the intelligence was this good about Gaza. If it was, then they would know where all the hostages are, and they would have launched military operations to save them. There is one other, since I mentioned Gaza, I'll go to Gaza for a minute and then come back to this. There is a rumor out there, or the Israeli military intelligence right now is investigating, together with the Shabak and the Mossad, they're investigating the possibility that Sinwar, the head of Hamas, was killed in one of the bombings over the last few days or the last few weeks. Sinwar has gone silent. Nobody has heard from him, not even within Hamas hierarchy. The Qataris, the Egyptians, the Egyptian intelligence, the Americans, nobody's heard from him. And one possibility is that he was killed. We'll see. We can all hope that he has died, hopefully very, very slowly. But there certainly is no certainty, and Israel's not ready to announce they killed him. They're going to wait to accumulate intelligence. I think within the intelligence community, there's disagreement about whether this is true or not. So again, we will see. What else do I want to tell you about Lebanon? So then the question becomes, as I said, what will happen? The Biden administration is going to put a huge amount of pressure on Israel once it takes, well, it already is putting pressure. It might put a lot of pressure on it not to actually put boots on the ground in Lebanon, but it might have accepted that as a fact. So I did see a story just before we started the show that the Americans have requested that Israel give it space to put troops on the ground in Lebanon to evacuate American citizens. So the U.S. is evacuating Americans from Lebanon, which I think means that they realize that this is real, that this is a war that Israel's actually going to enter into Lebanon. Now, whether that means that the Israelis will go to Beirut, like I would suggest, and maybe get a bulldozer and find Nasrallah in the deep well that he is hiding in and drag him out and maybe hang him from a tall tree. No, they won't do that. But yeah, go to Beirut and finish the job. I doubt that they'll do that, but that is a possibility. I don't know what the planners have, but certainly I think at this point they will go into southern Lebanon. And then I think the pressure will start from the French and from the Americans, primarily from the Americans, to negotiate a deal. There is a UN resolution, 1701 I think it's called, that basically states that Hezbollah must stay north of Litani and that the UN would occupy southern Lebanon. You know how well that worked. The UN, by the way, is still in southern Lebanon. They're still pretending to be peacekeepers. That has worked really well for them. Israel, by the way, told them to evacuate today. They didn't want to kill any UN personnel by accident. These are not quite the same UN personnel as UNRWA, which are terrorists themselves and facilitators of terrorism. These are just weak, pathetic, impotent UN soldiers. I remember years ago driving along the road on the northern border. There's a road where you can actually, you could throw a rock into Lebanon. You can see Lebanon right there. And you would see the UN soldiers hanging out in their little thing. And they would have the UN flag. And right next to them, somebody would have a Hezbollah flag hanging, even though there weren't supposed to be any Hezbollah there. That showed just right in that image, the weakness of the UN. So I think there'll be a lot of pressure. I don't know what kind of deal Israel could accept. Obviously, Hezbollah did not fulfill 1701. Obviously, the UN didn't live up to its commitments vis-a-vis 1701. As you know, I would argue that that Israel and the United States and pretty much every other Western country should leave the UN and should tell the UN to go take a hike, maybe move it to Caracas in Venezuela. I think that would be appropriate housing for the UN. That's really beautiful real estate in Manhattan that should be taken over by some commercial enterprise, maybe a bank, something like that. That would be appropriate. But so then they'll start negotiating. And what kind of deal they can cut, I don't know. But I think what Israel should do, at a minimum, they won't do the maximum, but a minimum, they have to preserve southern Lebanon as, in a sense, a demilitarized zone. The only way they can do that, the only way that can be enforced, is that Israel enforces it. They have to be willing to, and the world just has to accept that they're going to enforce that demilitarization. That could be with literally troops on the ground. It could be with drones. It could be with all kinds of technology. But they're going to have to find a way to stay in southern Lebanon, or in other words, to keep Hezbollah out. Now, there is a kind of a very optimistic scenario which is possible here. Unlikely, very unlikely, but possible. And that is that Israel weakens Hezbollah so much, and it hasn't done it yet. There's still a lot more work that it needs to do in order to achieve this. But Israel weakens Hezbollah so much that the Lebanese, who are not Hezbollah, now remember, Hezbollah is part of Lebanese society. It's part of Lebanon. But it's not all of Lebanon. It doesn't represent all of Lebanon. Lebanon is a very tribal society. Hezbollah represents most Shiites in Lebanon, but really not all Shiites in Lebanon. There's another political party that represents other Shiites in Lebanon who are not supporters of Hezbollah necessarily. And then the Sunnis, the Muslim Sunnis, who don't usually get along with Shiites, don't necessarily support Hezbollah. The Christians don't support Hezbollah, although some Christians have allied with Hezbollah because it's been in their kind of political interests, so-called, for a while to ally with them. And then the Druze, who've always had a pretty strong military force, who historically didn't align with Hezbollah, but again, Hezbollah has dominated Lebanese politics for 30 years now. So everybody's been an affiliate of Hezbollah at some point, but none of them like Hezbollah. I bet you the Druze and the Christians and the Sunnis all hate Hezbollah's guts. I mean, imagine if the Lebanese army, which is really based on primarily Christian foundation, with Christians there, but if they got the Jews and they got the Sunnis on board with them, imagine if they took on the task of taking the advantage of Hezbollah being weakened by Israel, of basically dismantling Hezbollah from within. And that is what should happen. That would be the ideal scenario. That would be an ideal for Israel. And then any deal that would happen between Israel and Lebanon, and the Lebanese army, and the Lebanese government, with a guarantee that Hezbollah is no longer a military force within Lebanon. Again, unlikely scenario, but it's the most optimistic outcome I can think of. The most realistic outcome is there's no deal. Nasrallah stays obstinate. He's willing to have his people killed. He doesn't care about their lives, as many as necessary. And Israel literally has to go to Beirut and find him and kill him and destroy the organization from within. And then maybe the Lebanese can take over. Again, Israel has not a very good experience with that from the 1980s. But this time, hopefully, Israel retreats out of Lebanon fairly quickly, at least out of northern Lebanon, and only keeps southern Lebanon. It basically dismantles all the weapon systems. Now, having said all that, the reality is that no long-term solution can actually happen. No long-term solution can actually happen. In the Middle East, more broadly, in Israel's wars, in Israel's conflict with the Palestinians, with the other Arab countries, and with Hezbollah and Hamas and everybody else, no possible solution can be achieved as long as the Iranian mullahs are in power, as long as the barbaric regime of Iran continues to rule Iran and continues to be as well funded as they are. It has to be high on the priority list for Israel. I mean, it certainly should be high on the priority list for the United States, but I don't think the United States has the balls, the courage, the strategic thinking, the whatever. It has the military power to do it, but it doesn't have the foresight, and the principles to actually take out the Iranian regime. But somebody has to take them out. I was saying earlier today to somebody, somebody needs to get to Khamenei's beeper. And it's not just Khamenei. It would have to be Khamenei and his son, who might be Khamenei too, and the president, and the council of elders, whatever they call them, the council of Islamist judges, and taking out the school in Homs. And I mean, it would have to be a systematic annihilation of radical Islamists in Iran. We're talking about several thousand people having to be destroyed. It's not a huge project. The other option is, this one would even be easier, this one's super simple, is destroy the Iranian economy. You could destroy the Iranian economy in less than a week, probably in a day. The Iranian economy, I've said this before on a show, I think they have one terminal out of which all the oil exports happen. You take out that terminal, that's it. They have no revenue. You also should take out the nuclear power the nuclear program, the nuclear power plant they're building. You take out, a lot of the Islamic Republican or Revolutionary Guard. But this is not hard. It's harder for Israel because it's far away, it's just Israel's busy right now. But it's easy for the United States, who has aircraft carriers right there, who could take them out and finished. But you could destroy the oil fields, you could bomb the oil fields, create fires. The environmentalists would love you for doing that. I mean, then you'd really see Greta be angry. Right now she's just angry, but she would really get super angry if you actually blew up the oil fields and caused fires and CO2 emissions and all of that.
But she wants to stop oil.
But she wants to stop oil, so maybe that anger would, maybe it could be an alliance between Israel and Greta to stop oil from Iran. Anyway, the Iranians have to be taken out. Otherwise, this doesn't end. At least you might get some peace in the short run, but you're not going to get anything long run as long as Iran is ruled by who Iran is ruled by. All right, let's see. What else do we want to talk about the Middle East? Anything else that I haven't covered? The search for the hostages and for Hamas leadership continues, as I said, in the Gaza Strip. Israel's still bombing there. I think it used helicopters today in the Gaza Strip. The airplanes were all busy in Lebanon. But Israel, I mean, this is the thing. I'm in Israel, and I think some of the objectivists in Israel and non-objectivists in Israel are concerned about Israel's viability. Is this country, can it survive? It's surrounded by enemies, by hundreds of millions of enemies. I mean, just Egypt is like, what, 80 million or 100 million or something like that? I mean, it's a massive country. The militaries of many of these Arab countries are now better. Egypt has American weapons, Saudi Arabia has American weapons, and many of the other, and then there's Iraq, and there's Iran, and there's Syria, and there's Lebanon, and it just seems overwhelming and all-out Middle East war, and you've got generals on TV saying we would lose such a war, and we don't have enough troops, and the IDF is not good enough, they're not competent enough, and all of that in many respects is true. It's a small army, and there are many, many weaknesses that the IDF has. It's like Churchill's state, it's something like similar to Churchill's. It's not a perfect army, but it's by far the best. So all the problems that IDF has, Hamas, Hezbollah, the Iranians have tenfold the number of problems. But people are existentially worried. Can the country survive? Will it survive? And, I am optimistic, if you can call it optimism. It's my view is, and this is true of the West generally, right? This is true of the West, is we're going to survive. We're going to survive less optimally than we could. More people are going to die than should. We're going to be poorer than we should be. But we're not going to just collapse. and we're not going to lose. And it's partially because of our virtue. And what are those virtues? We're somewhat rational. We're somewhat free. And that's enough. And we're more than somewhat. We're pretty free and pretty rational. I mean, just look at the tech. Look at the beeper operation. Wow. The long-term rational thinking that went into putting that together. The planning, the contingencies, the red teaming, just the strategy, the strategic thinking. I mean, they're rational people here. So we have rationality and freedom on our side. Even if it's not perfectly implemented. Even if we don't have a full moral backbone. Even if we don't understand everything in terms of what's at stake. We have enough in Israel and in the West where we shouldn't be worried about the Islamists. We shouldn't be worried about the Russians, the Chinese, maybe a little bit, but really no. The West is so much more powerful and will continue to be as long as it stays somewhat rational and basically free. And again, this relates to generally the West. Is the West in decline? Yes, but the West in decline means that it's basically growing economically slower, that it's not having as much of a positive impact on the world out there, and that it's creating circumstances within the West that could lead to its demise, but are not yet leading to its demise, because we have enough freedom and enough rationality to keep going. And there's one other thing, we're rich. And to dissipate all of our wealth would require just such economic catastrophes that I just don't see them anytime soon on the horizon. I mean, bad things are going to happen, but not at the level of wiping out the wealth that's been accumulating at the West. And, you know, so when people say, oh, I gave this example earlier today, when people say, oh, the Muslims are going to take over Europe, you know, Islamism is going to take over Europe, look what's happening in Germany, look what's happening in all these places in France. And my response to that is, no. I mean, Islamism is too weak. They're too pathetic. They're too irrational. They're too authoritarian. They're too weak. I mean, they can't even build the explosives that they wear on their vest when they blow themselves up. They have to import it. They don't know the science behind the explosives going off. They don't, right? And you know, and they're a suicidal religion, right? There's a certain element that the Islamists they want to die. Those civilizations can't survive. It's not a civilization. Those cultures cannot thrive. They cannot win. They cannot establish an empire. The Arab Empire, when it was an empire, did not have that mentality. It was not an empire of suicide. It was an empire, if anything, of Aristotle. It was an empire of learning, of philosophy. And when it lost the learning of philosophy, it reverted to barbarism and poverty and decadence and nothingness. So, you know, barbarism is not a winning strategy. It's a losing strategy. So Islam will never take over Europe. But what it could make Europe become is a place we wouldn't want to live in, a place of, you know, racism, of authoritarianism, of fascism, of maybe even concentration camps, just this time with Muslims inside of it. And that's not a good thing. It's not a Europe you want to live in. But that could be the outcome, could be the consequence of what's happening. The one outcome that I think is basically impossible is Islam taking over Europe. It's the same, I mean, in some level, my attitude towards my chat is not the same as there. Am I behind or is that chat behind?
I think it might be this one. This one is frozen for like
Oh, that one's frozen, okay. Frozen again, that word, it's same with my attitude about, so you can't do anything about it? Okay. So it's the same as my attitude towards the left, to some extent. I don't think the woke, crazy left can win. I just don't think enough people will ever support their wacky ideas. I don't think enough people in the world are egalitarians. People just won't do it. The problem, I think, is the backlash against that. And the backlash against that will be a kind of fascism, a kind of classism, a kind of anti-egalitarianism, but not in the positive sense of based on ability. But what? The picture's not frozen. What they say?
No, you said Frozen and they got the also.
You freaked out. I'm freaked out as well about Frozen. The word is very upsetting to me. Why did it turn brown? What turned brown? Now I don't know what's going on. Enric says I'm good. Whew. Thank you, Enric. Oh, by the way, can somebody make it colder in here? It's super hot. It's super hot. So anyway, it's for the same reason I don't think they wacky. The left is so wacky that they can't. The right, the fascists, and this is what I think what Germany did, is they leverage off of capitalism. They leave enough kind of economic freedom a little bit here and there to be able to still suck out the wealth, and they have a runway. Whereas the communists come and they nationalize everything and everything collapses. You see that in Venezuela right now. So I think the fascists in America are the ones who are likely to win, not the egalitarian left. And the egalitarian left is not even communist. It's woke and nihilistic and egalitarian. All right, that's Israel. Do you want to hear about anything except Israel? I've got a bunch of topics here. All right, so let's step away from Israel for a moment. Just a quick another Middle East story, and then we'll move away from the Middle East. Quick Middle East story, because this is a news roundup. It turns out that the U.S. is finally actually going to leave Iraq. So the Biden administration has signed a deal with Baghdad that the U.S. troops and all other foreign forces, except Iranian, I assume, will leave Iraq in 2026. And I think it's worth asking the question, is Iraq safer for America today than it was before the Americans entered Iraq as they leave? And I think the answer is no. Iraq is in worse shape for America's interests, for Israel's interests. It's a satellite of Iran's. And America leaving will be not quite as bad as leaving Afghanistan, but it'll be very similar. Indeed, I think that this Iraq right now is much more dangerous for America because it's an Iranian satellite and because in a sense it's a terrorist state than the Iraq of Saddam Hussein, which worked within certain narrow parameters of enhancing Saddam Hussein's, craziness, and did not allow quite the same level of terrorist activities on its territory as this Iranian regime is allowing. So the one Iraq, the one Afghanistan, both complete and utter failures, both defeats for the American military, and this leaving of Iraq will just solidify that even further. It is interesting because as Trump left office, he cut a deal with the Taliban, a deal that Biden executed on, and of course was a fiasco. This time, Biden's going to sign a deal with Iraq that it could be Trump that actually enforces, and we'll see if he does any better job than Biden did. Public announcement of this has not been made yet, but it looks like the outline of the deal has been made, and they'll probably make an announcement this week, although it could be that news out of Lebanon and Israel will will cause them to delay the announcement about the United States leaving Iraq. We'll see. We'll see how that happens. All right, let me. This is kind of an interesting story. We've talked about Brazil and Elon Musk, right? We've talked about the fact that Brazil shut down Twitter. They shut down Twitter because of what Twitter was, the statements being made, right-wing statements, the use of Twitter supposedly to try to overturn the election of Lula, and so on. And when basically Elon Musk refused to enforce Brazil's silencing of certain people and certain views on Twitter, basically Brazil banned Twitter. I mean, that is the ultimate outcome of that. I've noted this in the past. I wish Elon Musk was consistent. He doesn't have any problem limiting what is said on Twitter for other regimes, the Chinese regime and other regimes in the past, like Turkey before the election last time, asked Twitter to restrict what certain people were saying, and Elon Musk went along. So it's not that Elon Musk is some free speech hero as he tries to present himself. Sadly, I wish he was. But certainly here he is. He's standing up to Brazilian authorities. Twitter is shut down. Unfortunately, Elon Musk did cave on Starlink, so Starlink in Brazil does not carry Twitter either. For a long time, there was criticism. Everybody on the right, everybody was saying, yeah, I mean, the White House supports Brazil. They support Lula. If they got into power, they will shut down Twitter, just like the Brazilians did. I mean, that's a standard line in Trump and J.D. Vance's campaign speeches. Well, it turns out that late last week, the White House actually denounced the Brazilian regime for banning access to X. So I thought that was interesting. This is a rare statement in support of Elon Musk. Even Elon Musk recognized that on Twitter and saying, yeah, good. Oh, it's about time or something like that. So Biden did say, no, this is bad. They shouldn't be doing this. Unfortunately, others did not. It turns out that there's been a letter circulating, signed by some of the world's leading economists, basically supporting Brazil in its conflict with Twitter, and basically saying that they're in the right and that they are just, and this is what other countries need to do. They need to have sovereignty over social media, which basically means censorship over social media. And we're talking about, now most of these guys are leftists, but still, Zuckerman and Varoufakis, if you remember Varoufakis, the Greek economists, and we talk about Doctorow and Morozov and Mazzucato, and of course Thomas Piketty and other economists, well-known economists. I can't remember how many people signed this letter, but these are like all well-standing members in the American Economic Association, and these are famous economists and all of that. And here they are just coming out against free speech, basically allowing a government to censor an entire platform and having no problem with that, shutting it down. And to Tyler Cowen on Marginal Revolution's credit, he actually put up a link with a translation of the letter that these people wrote. One of the things he says is, somehow, no one's talking about this petition and its embrace of censorship. And indeed, no one is. We're the free market economists putting out an equivalent document condemning all of this. Where's the mainstream media condemning these economists for standing by censorship? Ain't happening. Nobody is standing up against this. Let's see, what else do I want to say? That story we got. Oh, wait, one other story that we've talked about in the past. We talked about Intel quite a bit over the last few years. Intel, the chip maker, legendary company, has big operations here in Israel. My first job as a construction manager when I was a civil engineer in a previous life, I built the first clean room in Israel. I didn't build it. I was a little peon in the construction management company that managed the project in Haifa. So I built the first building Intel built with a clean room in it in Haifa. And so I always drive by the building. I built that, that's my building. Anyway, Intel's a legendary company, an exceptional company, was for years the leading manufacturer of chips in the world. It's been in decline for the last 15 or so years, certainly over the last decade. And, has laid off a lot of people in the last few months. has had really bad earnings. Its stock is down 60%, I think, since the beginning of the year. Lost its glory. Heavily subsidized, by the way, by the U.S. government in recent times. So we talked about that. Biden in the CHIP Act, a bipartisan act, by the way. Intel got a lot of money. Its stock has declined. It's in real trouble. It really doesn't know in what business it's in. It really isn't in what's turned out. The market has evolved in a way that Intel is really in two businesses. One is designing chips, and the other is manufacturing chips. And the market is splintered. That is, those two are two different businesses. For example, almost all chip design happens in the United States. The U.S. is by far the leading, companies in the U.S. are the leading chip designers in the world. But almost all the high-end chip manufacturing is done in Taiwan and South Korea. There's basically very little done in the United States. Intel is way behind. They're trying to skip ahead with the latest, greatest chip manufacturing technology coming out of, what's the company's name? The Netherlands company that builds the chip manufacturing machines. There's only one company in the world that does this. And so Intel's trying to skip ahead to the next generation, trying to catch up with AI, but it's struggling. Well, last week, interestingly enough, it got a takeover offer. Another company, another chip manufacturer in the United States, really a chip design company in the United States. They don't manufacture the chips. TSMC manufactures those chips for it in Taiwan. And that is Qualcomm, which designs chips that are probably in your cell phone. Even Apple has Qualcomm chips in the phone, even though Apple is trying to build their own or design their own telecommunication chips. Qualcomm designs telecommunication. The most advanced telecommunication chips in the world are designed by Qualcomm. Qualcomm is also trying to enter into AI chips. They're also trying to compete on AI chips. Well, Qualcomm has made a bid to take over Intel, which is fascinating because if you think about the history of chip making, Intel was the giant, Qualcomm was this little startup not that long ago, and now Qualcomm is going to take over Intel. I think it's a beautiful example of how capitalism works, of how the ups and downs of capitalism, and how it's hard to stay on top. It's hard to be good for decades and decades. It's very, very rare in the history of business to be successful decade after decade after decade. And Schumpeter coined this term, which I don't particularly like, but I think it reflects creative destruction. This idea that new technologies come, you can't keep up, and you need to go. And a part of going is getting taken over, and Qualcomm is taking over now. Whenever something like that happens, and it forced Intel to think strategically, okay, do we want to merge with Qualcomm? Maybe not. Maybe we don't want to become employees of Qualcomm. So what else can we do? And it looks like Intel has gone into the marketplace and examined other options. And today, I read a story that Apollo Group is one of the biggest private equity funds in the world. It is a group started by a guy named Leon Black, who's no longer there, but Leon Black was a former Drexel Lambert investment banker, a former protege of Michael Milken. Anyway, a great businessman. Anyway, they are now thinking of making a massive investment in Intel. So they're going to put billions of dollars into Intel instead of the Qualcomm deal, as a consequence of both the takeover offer and the interest by Apollo Group. The stock of Intel has been up the last few days. I didn't look today, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's up even more today, given that the Apollo news only broke, I think, this morning or over the weekend. So I'm going to keep track of that. I think it's a fascinating story. Intel is a fascinating and important company, and this whole chip, the whole microprocessing world is, of course, how we run the modern world. I mean, we run it on microprocessors, and understanding it, understanding the geopolitical risks involved and the importance of the whole enterprise is, I think, important. So it's an industry worth keeping an eye on, and on the Yaron Brook Show, we will continue to do that. Just a few other things, a few other stories. Mexico. Mexico is a great example of what happens when you have anarchy. Mexico has nominally a government, But it really, outside of Mexico City and maybe certain provinces, Mexico is run by cartels, drug cartels. They basically, run the local governments. They run the local police forces. They control everything. And what that leads to is massive amounts of violence, because these are private police forces. They collect protection money. You know what protection money is? It's a fee for services for a private police force. So this is the anarcho-capitalist's wet dream, is cartel-run Mexico. This is what they think the world should look like. Well, it turns out that when there's a conflict within a cartel, they don't go to voluntary arbitration. I mean, it's stunning. You'd think that the incentive structure, because, anarchists always tell us, oh, there won't be any fighting under anarchy, because war is very expensive. People don't want to spend the money on war. It's expensive in life and expensive money. Ooh, maybe I should tell that to Hamas and Hezbollah. But maybe if they heard the anarcho-capitalist argument, we'd have peace in the world. These people are so detached from reality. It's astounding. Anyway, it turns out that within the Sinaloa cartel, they have a disagreement. They don't use voluntary arbitration as the anarcho-capitalists would predict they will do. What they actually do is they take out the arsenal of weapons that they have and start killing each other. And indeed, just over the last few, really, 2 weeks? 2 weeks, there has been a massive conflict within the Sinaloa cartel in a part of Mexico, its western region. And two different parts of the cartel are vying for dominance. At least 53 people are being killed and 51 people are missing as a consequence of this, just in the last couple of weeks. These cartels have a huge amount of money. Now, part of this dispute happened because one member of the cartel took the lead of the cartel, drugged him. This is life in Mexico. Drugged the lead of the cartel, put him on a private plane, flew him to America, and handed him over to American authorities. It's just one of the weirdest stories I've ever heard. Who knows what was going on there? And since then, they've been fighting it out. There've been shootouts on a daily basis. And so we've got at least, it looks like 104 casualties, but probably many, many more to come. Again, this is just a perfect illustration of how the anarcho-capitalists, this is the world in which they inhabit, or they would inhabit if they got to ever implement their ideas. Oh, but they have in Mexico right now. Let's see. Okay, we got a few positive news stuff, if you've got the patience for that. So it turns out that there's a group of scientists led by the Chinese, but includes Australia, Belgium, Britain, France, Greece, India, Italy, Japan, Malaysia, Russia, Singapore, Turkey, United States, and Vietnam. 15 countries represented. They've created a new human genome project. They're calling it the Human Genome 2. And what they are going to do is they want to sequence the genome of more than 1% of the world's population. That is the entire genome of 1% of the world population. And then use that for health research and longevity research, with the idea of using that to extend human life. With the idea that part of why some people live longer and other people don't is genetic. If we can tease out what it is about their genes that makes them live longer, then we can probably help people live longer. This is a massive project. It's going to cost a lot of money, but the technology is available. It's just a matter of allocating the time and the resources to it. And we're talking about sequencing the entire genome of between 80 to 100 million people in 100 different countries. So that you also get genetic variation across different parts of the world. So I think it's a fascinating project. It's going to be super interesting. They're calling it, again, Human Genome Project 2. The first project was the first time they sequenced the human genome. And that was ultimately achieved by a private enterprise that beat out the government enterprise by a significant amount, both in time and money invested. If you're interested in buying into the OpenAI, latest round of funding. The ChatGPT maker is raising a huge amount of money right now. They're valuing the company $150 billion. I have no idea if that's justified. I suspect not. I suspect that that's inflated valuation. But don't worry, because Josh Kushner, I think this is the same Kushner of Trump. Was that Jared? That's Jared Kushner. I wonder if it's the same Kushner or if it's the same family. I should look that up. Anyway, Josh Kushner is going to invest $1 billion in this. It looks like Apple, NVIDIA, and Microsoft together are going to put in another few billion, and they're going to raise $5 billion to fund OpenAI's development of the next generation of ChatGPT. I do find it interesting and a little suspect about this valuation that Anderson Horowitz and Sequoia Capital, who are investors in OpenAI, are not participating in this round of funding, which suggests to me that they maybe think it's a little rich. That is, the valuation might be too high, not enough return there to justify them. And then finally, and this is really good news, it's kind of amazing news. So we've talked about this on the show, that there's a massive shortage of electricity in the United States. And particularly if you extrapolate data centers, the need for massive amounts of electricity to run these data centers, we're talking about a significant increase in the demand for energy over the next 10 years. And that a lot of the biggest buyers of energy are already, and are becoming even more so, technology companies like Microsoft. And that there's been this massive search in the tech companies are basically searching the world, or searching the United States, for energy, for electricity. Well, Microsoft has at least solved some of its problems. Microsoft has come to a deal. It's pretty amazing. They've come to a deal with Constellation Energy. And Constellation Energy has agreed to reopen 3 Mile Island nuclear plant. The famous 3 Mile Island, where there was a nuclear accident that really started the whole anti-nuke movement, that shut down all, that stopped construction of nuclear power plants. But that plant was shut down in 2019 for good. They shut it down in phases. It was shut down in good in 2019 because it was too expensive, because of old technology and because it was so badly. Anyway, they're going to restart it because Microsoft is going to fund the whole thing, because it's much easier to restart 3 Mile Island and maybe make some tweaks and improve it a little bit than to build a whole new power plant, right? So Microsoft is basically paying for the restart of 3 Mile Islands and basically buying all the electricity they can produce. I think that is so cool. And basically will power data centers in Illinois, all the way from Illinois to Virginia, so it'll cover that East Coast. It's a huge power plant. Have you ever seen pictures of this? This is one of the most massive places. It's a massive nuclear power plant, now totally dedicated to powering Microsoft servers. As somebody who's not a big fan of Microsoft anything, other than Microsoft itself, I'm not a fan of their computers and software. All right, cool. That is the news for September 23rd. And a lot of events, very eventful, primarily here in Israel. We have, let's see, we have some super chats from yesterday that I will get to, I promise. We have some super chat from today that we're going to cover. But the super chat is still open, so we will take more super chats. So please think if you have questions. The reality is I have a stable internet connection for the first time in 2 months since I left Puerto Rico. It's actually really, really good. It's like speeds at home and stable. It's as if it's a wired connection. It's all Wi-Fi, so it's pretty amazing. I've also got a few people here live, so you guys, if you want to ask questions, feel free to ask. We'll take some questions. Let me start, though, with the super chat. Amen, thank you for being here. $200, really, really, really appreciate that. Thank you. Amin says, please keep safe. I started watching Fauda, first 2 seasons, and felt it portrayed the terrorist side to be a bit too kindly. fun show regardless. Yes, I do think that's true. There is, I mean, Fauda tries to be, particularly in the first season, apolitical. It tries to not take sides. So I just view it as a great suspense story. Now there is a scene in either, I think it's the second season or maybe the third season, where the hero says something positive about Israel. But generally, they just try to stay out of it, of the politics. They show the terrorists as bad, but they don't make them ultra political, and they don't make the Israelis ultra political. It's just you abstract away from all this. I just view it as a great, like the last season, 4, which was set in Lebanon, was just stupid. I mean, there were good scenes, but it was like they entered Syria and somehow they landed up in places where you really hard to get to through Syria. I mean, the geography was all messed up in terms of how they played it, and they managed to cover a lot of ground in very little time. It's almost like, what's the show I'm watching right now, where people just show up in, oh yeah, Vikings. I'm watching the Viking show, and like the guy goes, he's in Constantinople, and the next scene is back in Norway, and it probably in those days took what, a year or 2 to get there, and he's like that, or they sail out of Norway, and then like a few days later they're in Greenland. Like Greenland was really hard to find, the waters are really rough, most ships got destroyed, and it took a long time. And it's just like no time exists in this show. It's as if they've got Beam Me Up Scotty from Star Trek. They just appear in different places. It's nuts. Anyway, the 4th season of Fauda felt like that a little bit. But I really enjoyed it just because of the intensity, the intensity and the action I thought was very, very well done. Amin, thank you. Really, really appreciate it. And I am staying safe and will continue to stay safe. Hopefully, yeah, we didn't talk about this, but hopefully, well, hopefully my parents are safe because today they attempted to bomb Haifa. They didn't succeed. So they are safe. But hopefully I'll be able to fly out tomorrow. So that's the big if right now is, will they shut down the airport tomorrow? It really depends on whether, because today the missiles came pretty close to the airport. They were I'd say just east of the airport, right? If you look at the thing. So I hope they don't shut down the airport tomorrow. I think taking off, you take off west at the airport. You land from the east. Yes, you land from the east. So I'm hoping they'll let us take off to the west over the Mediterranean. But so wish me luck for that. I will flying tomorrow to Madrid. I will be in Madrid for 3 nights. And then on Friday, I will be flying finally home to Puerto Rico. I kind of miss Puerto Rico. I miss home. Home is nice in Puerto Rico. And we'll get back to some normalcy of the shows, although I think I told you I'm getting shoulder surgery in like 2 weeks. So I will be, I don't know how incapacitated I'm going to be. So they're going to make some holes in my shoulder and put screws and tie stuff up. So hopefully I'll be in less pain than I am. So that'll be good. All right, what do we do here? All right, John, $100. Thank you, really appreciate it. John is quoting from the MCU series, WandaVision. I don't know anything about this series. From MCU series WandaVision. Anybody heard of WandaVision? I don't know what this is. Okay, quote, it can't all be sorrow, can it? I've always been alone, so I don't feel the lack. It's all I've ever known. I've never experienced loss because I've never had a loved one to lose. But what is grief if not love persevering? What is grief if not love persevering? I don't know. I don't think I like that. And I feel sorry for this character that they've been alone and they've never experienced love. I mean, it's not Shakespeare who said this. I always say Shakespeare. Who said it's better to have... Tennyson said this, right? It's better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all. So you know, so the sentiment here is a deep personal, you know, pretty emotional sentiment, but it's not one I share. I don't know what One Division is, and I don't know what MCU is, but
Marvel Cinematic Universe.
what cinematic universe?
Marvel.
Oh, from the superhero stuff. All right, so I don't watch those things. Sorry. So it's sad that somebody's alone. It's sad that they've never loved. Even if you lose, it's better to have loved than not, because that's what love is. That's what life, to a large extent, is about. It's about love for another person, love of your life, love of your work, love of the art that you love. You know, it's about passionate valuing, which is what love is, if you will, passionate valuing. So thank you, John. And if you have a particular question about the quote, happy to try to answer it. Adam, likely results of Putin sending masses of Iran-trained terrorists into Europe via Belarus. One recently killed a Polish border guard with an improvised weapon. Would Trump propose deal with Putin ×4 this via Ukraine? Putin has not succeeded in sending Iran-trained terrorists into Europe via Belarus. It's not even clear that the people trying to enter Poland through Belarus are terrorists or that they were trained by Iran. So, you know, I would be careful in jumping to that conclusion. They're clearly Muslims that they've rounded up and put into this horrible situation where they're basically in the forests in Belarus trying to cross over to Poland. The Poles won't let them cross. The Belarusians don't want them. They were brought there by Belarus in order to cross into Europe. So they're being played. I mean, I feel sorry for them because I don't think they're terrorists. Their families there, their children there, they're pregnant. I've seen pregnant women there. And they're basically being played as pawns in this geopolitical game that's happening out there. What's going on? Something?
It's me. I just want you in able to. I say thank you about the interesting meeting, and I hope that next year.
Oh, that was you.
Yes.
Okay.
Because directly, I just and the audience will read the news, so some of them just.
Cool. תודה ירון, על המפגש מעניין, מקווה ביקור הבא שלך בארץ תשתר מביירות. אני מקווה שלא. He said, I hope you broadcast next time from Beirut. I hope I don't. I've been to Beirut once in my life. I think that's plenty. I don't need to go back. And the one time I went to Beirut was probably ranks as the dumbest thing I've ever done. It was pretty stupid. But anyway, that's fun. I think I've told the story. If not, somebody can put some dollars and I'll tell the story again. GB, just wanted to say thanks for all your work and that it was a pleasure seeing you in person today. Oh, GB is here?
Who's GB?
Okay, so he was here earlier. He's not here right now. Thank you, GB. Really appreciate it. Thanks for coming tonight. I also gave a lecture last night. Yesterday I gave a lecture on, I think I talked about it on the show yesterday, so on morality and war. Hopefully that'll go up online at some point, but it's all in Hebrew. So you guys, if you wanna get the full impact of it, you're gonna have to study Hebrew. All right, Enric, I think I'm actually gonna answer your question. I think you got a little bit of it yesterday, but I don't think you ever got the complete answer. All right, Enric says, off topic, do you have any views on transhumanism? And I think this is the same answer I'm gonna give you now that I gave you yesterday. We'll see. Transhumanism, it really depends on what you mean. If what you mean is that we are going to embed technology into our biology, integrate technology into our biological being, in the sense that we might be implanting chips, we're going to tweak with our genes, we're going to pre-select the kind of babies we want. There's no question about that is going to happen. I think it's a good thing. I don't think it's a bad thing that you could get to choose the color eyes of your kids. Why is that a bad thing? I don't get it. In the level of intelligence and all of that, or at least the IQ, the things that can be determined in the genes. If you mean by that we're going to have bionic arms, that we're going to be able to reinforce our arm with some kind of robotic thing that'll make us stronger to do certain physical activities, then absolutely transhumanism is going to happen. As long as civilization advances, human beings are not evolving biologically, because if you get sick, we just cure you. So, there's no mechanism by which the weakness, except at certain extremes, is rooted out of the genetic code of human beings. We can do it artificially by tweaking the genetic code. So we will take control of our own evolution by tweaking our own genes. And then part of our evolution would be integrating technology into our biology. And I don't know how this works. You'd have to be a science fiction writer to figure this out, or somebody in the field who knows something about this. But there's going to be a brain chip interface that's going to work in some way. It already works. Elon Musk's company has already had some success in very simplistic tasks. 100,000 years from now, it's going to be a lot better. So in that sense, I think it's transhumanism. I think there's a transhumanistic, I don't know if you call it a cult or religion or belief out there that it has a certain element of, I don't know, but it just gives off a certain aura of mysticism, a certain aura of being non-scientific. That not. But if it's, science will advance, and science will advance to improve the human body, and in a variety of different ways, both mechanical and biological. So in that sense, I'm a huge supporter of transhumanism. I don't think it's transhumanism, because what makes us human? It's not our arms, it's not our strength, it's not even the physical brain. It's our mind, it's our free will and our rational capacity. And that we're not going to transcend. We will still have that. We will just enhance it, enhance the abilities of that mind to do more in reality and to impact reality more forcefully, if you will. So in that sense, I'm a transhumanism, but I wouldn't call it transhumanism. It's not, we're going to transcend being human. Hector, be safe out there, Yaron. Thank you, Hector. Really appreciate it. Frank says, please repeat your AOC comments from yesterday. God, what did I say about AOC yesterday? Basically, AOC, was it yesterday or the day before? Let's say AOC said something negative about the Beeper attack. She called it a war crime. This is, of course, the ultimate in irrationality and altruism, the ultimate in basically in hating Israel and wanting to accuse it of everything. I mean, not being able to see how a targeted attack on people that are clearly engaged in evil activities is a good thing, I don't know. It's so morally corrupt. She is morally corrupt. And for her, I think it's mostly that she has to be PC. She's mostly on the side of the politically correct, and that's what she stands on. And she just mouths what basically they tell her to mouth. I don't think she knows much. I think she's smart, but I think she's ignorant. So nothing positive to say about AOC. Whoopbrand says, glad you're back, Yaron. I was worried you might have been blown up by Hezbollah when yesterday's live ended abruptly. Nobody in Israel is being blown up by Hezbollah. Hezbollah is pretty incompetent when it comes to blowing up Israelis. I mean, that is real. They're very good at getting themselves blown up. Very good at getting themselves blown up. But they're very bad at getting Israelis blown up. Very, very weak at achieving their values. Which is good in this case. So don't worry too much about me. I'm fine. I'm safe. I'm not really worried. Others might be worried for me, but I'm not worried. I have a sense of the capabilities of the enemy and of my allies. And I also know probabilities, and the probability of any person, a missile dropping on their head, is very low. Ian Mirkat says, feels bad for the heavenly virgins who will stay virgins for eternity. P.S. Gaza must be destroyed. Thank you, Ian Mirkat, for for inspiring us. Everybody's having a good laugh here today. All right, Soupy Cask says, is slavery a legitimate form of private property? No, no, no. You can't have property of another human being. It is a direct violation of rights. You cannot give up sovereignty. You are sovereign, and you cannot give that sovereignty up. So even voluntary, slavery is an illegitimate concept. But there's no such thing as human beings being property. Property is something human beings have, create, build, own. It's not something they are. It's something that they bring into existence, property. Property doesn't exist without the person who owns it. You cannot be private property, even if you voluntarily do it. So there's no such concept. Libertarians talk about self-ownership, and I think Rand once in a while says something that implies self-ownership. I don't like the term because somebody has to own. You can't really own yourself. You come before the ownership. But you are the entity that owns. Nothing can own you. And it's because you have rights. It's because you're a thinking being, and your only means of survival is to stay free. Here's a question I don't want to answer. Kabuto asks, what happened to Amy Peikoff? I don't know. What happened to Amy Peikoff? You have to be more specific about the question. I'm not going to speculate about what you mean. Or even better, just don't ask questions about other people. Other people within kind of the movement. I'd rather just not answer them. Positive or negative. All right, meditation guru like Sam Harris claimed the self is an illusion and we're identical to experience or something like this. Yeah, I mean, you're confused too, I see. Me too. I don't know what the hell they're talking about.
Fallacy of self-inclusion.
It's the fallacy of self-inclusion. God, anybody who claims that they have discovered something true about reality by taking drugs or by putting their mind in neutral doesn't understand anything about reality, the mind, or human life. I mean, maybe I'm exaggerating, maybe not anything, but doesn't understand much. Harris is delusional, literally delusional, because he thinks you discover reality through deception, that is, through distorting and perverting your means of knowing reality, drugging your reason, distorting it, perverting it, taking this tool that has been refined by evolution to give you data on the world about reality so that you can survive, and taking drug in order so that you don't see reality anymore, and somehow that gives you truth. Because the reality is that if you took that drug and you tried to live on that drug, you would die very, very, very quickly. The drug is not a survival mechanism. It's an anti-survival mechanism. So I'm not saying you can never take drugs and drugs are never helpful. Maybe they cure certain psychiatric diseases. Maybe taking a trip once in a while clears your mind and opens it up. I don't know. I'm for science. I'm not definitively against any chemical use. As I said, transhumanism, maybe we'll also be taking chemicals to enhance our abilities. But it cannot be that a chemical that detaches you from reality and teaches you anything about the world, because it's detaching you from reality. And again, if you stayed on that drug, you couldn't survive. You would literally die. This is why they always recommend to you, if you're taking a drug, have people around you who are not taking the drug. Do it under supervision, because you can't survive. You might walk into the street and get run over. The saber-tooth tiger will come and you won't be able to defend yourself. And you won't be able to think yourself out of a problem, you won't be able to design anything, build anything, do anything. It's anti-productivity. I don't know how smart people, and Sam Harris is smart, and I really like Sam Harris, and some of his stuff is excellent, and on certain issues he's brilliant, but on this, it's completely crazy. And I'm not against meditation. Meditation is just rest for the brain. It's a way of going in neutral and shutting it down without going to sleep, of gaining certain rest of the brain. I can't do it. My brain is either on or off. I'm either asleep or I'm alert, and I can't, like when I try to meditate, I fall asleep. If I'm doing it well, like if I really manage to focus on nothing or on whatever it is that they want you to focus on, then I fall asleep. And if I can't do that, then I'm racing off to the races, whatever it is that I'm thinking. I can't reach a meditative state. I know people who can, and good for them, and it's great, and it's a form of relaxation, a form of rest for the brain. I'm not against it, but it's not where you learn about truth. It's not where you discover truth about reality, because you're turning your brain off, or at least throttling it down. And to learn about reality, you want to throttle it up. Andrew, what do you think would happen to the trajectory of objectivism if there was a business genius like Zuckerberg who was a committed objectivist? I think it would speed it up dramatically. Dramatically. And this is true not just in business. I mean, Harry Binswanger gives this example. Imagine if an objectivist scientist got the Nobel Prize. And on the stage he said, it's the objectivist epistemology that allows me to make my great discovery. I mean, that would accelerate the spread of objectivism, it would accelerate the spread of objectivism among certain types of people, people we want, smart people, ambitious people. And the same would be true if, I mean, I think John Allison, to the extent that he was recognized as an amazing businessman, the fact that he was an objectivist helped spread objectivism significantly in the 90s and 2000s. I think somebody in the tech industry with so much visibility, it would be huge if somebody did that. We're yet to have it. We've got a lot of them flirting with it. Yeah, Mark Andreessen, for some reason, he was following me on Twitter, and I just noticed he's blocked me on Twitter. Did I say something bad about Mark Andreessen? I don't know. Anyway, I'm blocked on Mark Andreessen's Twitter. He posts on Ayn Rand regularly. So you can find Ayn Rand quotes regularly in Mark Andreessen. And he's a pretty big shot. He's a big shot in the venture community. I'm not sure why he blocked me. What are the key elements of capitalism? God, that's a $5 question? That's like a $1,000 question. Okay, I'll give it a $5 answer. The key elements of capitalism is the protection of individual rights. It's basically freedom. Capitalism is freedom. Freedom of the individual to live his life based on his values, in pursuit of his values, based on his own rational mind, own rational conclusions. Capitalism is the protection of individual rights, a government dedicated to nothing more than but nothing less than the protection of individual rights and leaving us free of force, free of coercion, free of authority, free to, again, pursue our values based on our own rational mind. That's the essence of capitalism. What happens after you leave people free, how they organize, what economically happens, that's kind of the phenomena we recognize as capitalism. But it can't happen without that freedom. That's why we don't live in a capitalist world. There are no capitalist countries today because there's no places where individual rights are fully respected and protected. Nevfel, why don't you show the baby whale in your room? I can hear its voice. Just joking. I think that was the AC system yesterday, the baby whale. But if I had a baby whale, I would definitely show it. Do I have a baby whale? I was gonna do a show and tell, right? I was gonna show my book. You see this book? That's Free Market Revolution in Hebrew. I love seeing my books in foreign translations. My favorite is China, although the cover sucks in China. But it's still cool that it was translated into Chinese. But this is good, and it's a good cover. I like the skyline of New York. That's really cool. Thank you, Boaz, for doing that. All right, I like numbers. Should non-citizens be eligible to vote? No. I think one of the things that differentiates citizens from non-citizens is the ability to vote. Other than that, their rights should be respected. Voting is not an important right. It's not one of the most, it's not a basic individual right. It's a civil right. And non-citizens should not have the right to vote. I'm not even sure. Well, I mean, there's a whole debate to be had. Not now. One day we'll have it. about what should actually constitutes a citizen. I'm not convinced that everybody born in the United States, and I'm not talking here about children of illegal immigrants, I'm talking about children of legit 5th, 6th, 7th, 10th generation Americans. I'm not sure that being born in the United States should be enough to allow you to vote. Maybe there should be a test, something. Maybe you should know what you're doing. Maybe you should know something about the system of government that you're voting about. Maybe, I don't know. There's a number, I mean, remember the Founding Fathers didn't believe everybody should vote. You have to be a landowner, and there had to be certain standards. You know, there's a reason to believe that some standard is rational. Exactly what that is and how to implement it and all of that is really for another time. Let me just see if I can do this. I think I've still got 5 memberships to gift. Let's see if it'll let me. It hasn't been letting me recently, but maybe since I have a great Wi-Fi connection, it'll let me today. No, I mean, I think it's saying, you're in Israel, we don't trust you. You're not gifting anything. All right, it's not working, sorry. When I get back to Puerto Rico, I'll do my 5 additional September gifting. It let me gift from Spain. I think it's a little anti-Semitic, the gifting app. Paul, I read Steve Jobs' biography, and he says he took a lot of LSD when he was in his 20s at the same time. Some people think that helped his genius. I doubt it. What do you think, being a fellow Jobs fan? I mean, I doubt it, but I don't know. I just don't know. There's enough people out there that claim LSD has positive impact on you that I'm not willing to rule it out. And, you know, I've never taken LSD and don't plan to ever take it, although there is an argument that if you're going to take something like LSD or any of these drugs, do it like really, really at the end of close to the end of your life, because there's very little to lose at that point. So it makes you feel great for a few hours. That might be cool when you're 85 or something. And you know, if it'll do damage to the brain's going anyway, so who cares, right? You don't do it when you're young. Young, it's too risky, I think. But so I don't know. I doubt it, but I don't know. And my point is not that LSD or any of these drugs can't be helpful. Again, around psychiatric issues, around clearing certain blockages out, or recalibrating the chemistry of your brain. And look, the brain is influenced by chemistry. You're not in control of all the processes happening in your brain. So I do think, for example, depression and other things can be caused by chemical reactions in the brain. It's not all about ideas. That's why drugs can help. And I'm not against taking drugs to help certain psychiatric conditions. So it's possible that it could have helped, but it's interesting that he stopped at some point, right? So it would be interesting to find out why he stopped. But I still don't recommend it because I just don't think we know enough about it. We don't know enough about the long-term consequences. We don't know enough about negative side effects that could happen. We just don't know enough. We just got a bunch of $20 questions, so thank you guys. Hunter says, I heard an interesting anecdote made me think of your capitalism talks. A guy said his perspective was changed in an Uber with George Gruen, legend among guitarists, when the guy lamented how expensive guitars had become. Gruen responded that we're in the golden age of guitar making, that yes, they are $5,000 guitars, but the quality of guitar you can get today for $350 is astounding and far superior to those of the past. Yes, that is a great example, and that is true across the board. You can get a $10,000 computer. I think Apple sells a $10,000 computer if you get the right combination. But a $1,000 computer, a $600 Mac Mini is an astounding computer. I mean, I actually remember my first Mac was called an SE30. It was an all-in-one with a little black and white, maybe it was the first color, little tiny screen with, I don't know, 16 megabytes of memory or whatever. The whole, of not memory, the RAM, no. I mean, it was 16 megabytes of hard drive space. And it was astounding I was blown away by the SE30 when it was there. And now, for $600, I can get something that is more powerful than by far, than the computer that sent man to the moon. Than supercomputers not that long ago. So yeah, I mean, that's so true in every single realm. But sometimes it's nice to see it in a realm like guitars. I don't know, there's something about the guitar space, the space of guitarists. There's a lot of objectivists there. There's like a lot of Ayn Rand there. A lot of people have read Ayn Rand. I don't know why, but they have been. So I wouldn't be surprised if George Gruen has read Ayn Rand. But I do think that's true about how many options we have today in terms of quality and price. It's truly astounding. All right, Christian, on 9/11, I saw leftists posting memes with the name Allende, and the two I looked like twin towers, an American plane, and the number of deaths during Pinochet's era. What do you think about this? Well, I think it's horrible. What does Allende have to do with any of that, right? Let's even say that killing Allende or overthrowing Allende was a mistake, which it's not obvious that it was, but let's say it was a mistake. Okay, it was a mistake. That doesn't justify the Twin Towers. It doesn't justify Muslims doing it. Muslims had nothing to do with Allende. Allende was in Chile. So it's so nihilistic. It's so anti-American for the sake of being anti-American. It's so ahistorical, as if Allende wasn't a communist who was going to take Chile down the road of just absolute unequivocal disaster. Pinochet was a bad guy, but it's not like Allende was a saint. Tricycle, I just think it's horrific. Tricycle Jesus, what would China's reaction be if Israel destroyed Iran's oil fields? They'd be upset, and they would do nothing. So they'd be upset. Price of oil would go up. Right now, price of oil is coming down, but China would just shift its purchases elsewhere and buy more from Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia would probably, if Iran's oil capacity was destroyed, Saudi Arabia would probably up their capacity. The United States has a lot of capacity, could up. It would distort oil markets for a while, but oil markets have gone through a lot of ups and downs, and the reality is China wouldn't do anything. Chinese own property in Israel. They own part of the ports in Haifa. They're a trading partner of Israel. They get a lot of technology from Israel, sadly. A lot of the technology that does facial recognition in China, so you get your social score that tracks you and follows you around, was developed in Israel and sold to China. So the Chinese are not going to give up whatever relationship they have with Israel because Israel takes out the Iranian. And they're not a superpower. They're not going to come to to the Middle East and start intervening. They're not in a position to do that. They can barely take care of their backyard. Jennifer says, is it understandable to ever be embarrassed? Or is it worrying too much about what other people think? No, I think sometimes it is. You can do something that you feel embarrassed about, that you wouldn't want. It's not like we don't care what other people think. We do care about what other people think. Why don't we show up naked to business meetings? It's not acceptable by you, by other people. And you don't feel comfortable about it. Why? Because it's private and you'd feel embarrassed. So, there's suddenly a sense of, no, this is inappropriate. I did something inappropriate. Sorry. And embarrassment is a sense of saying sorry. It's a sense of, that was inappropriate shit. Why did I do that? That's all. But don't just recognize it, undo it, and keep going. It's not a mortal sin. It doesn't put you in 7 rungs of hell. Waco, Bennett talks tough. Will he be tougher than Bibi? I don't know, but it's hard to be weaker than Bibi. Sorry. I know he's tough this week. Finally, I've been waiting 20 years, 30 years actually, for Bibi to get tough. So he got tough after 30 years. And after October 7th, on his watch. So, look, it doesn't matter who replaces Bibi. You cannot vote for the guy. His policies made October 7th happen. There has to be responsibility in life. If you can get away with that level of, call it error, it wasn't error, it was evasion. Evasion, moral, it was immoral what he did. If you can get away with that kind of evasion with no consequences, then it's insanity. You live in a world that's insane. So if the Israeli public does not punish Bibi for what he did, and by the way, for his weakness in Gaza over the last 11 months, then the Israeli government deserves him, and I guess they do. But no, he needs to be out, whether it's Bennett or whether it's whoever. Let's learn how tough the other guys are. I think Bennett is better. We have no reason to think he's not. And we know he hates Bibi. That's a good start, generally. And we know he talks tough. That's also good. Well, let's try him out. Give him a shot. Mark, looking forward to seeing you back in Puerto Rico soon. Safe travels. Thank you, Mark. Gail, I wish we could show Elon Musk how much his use of reason has benefited him and all of us. I think if you did that, he would say, yeah, of course, it was reason. I don't think he would challenge that. It's just that he can't conceive of how to apply that to other aspects of life, and he can't think of how to be consistent about it. I don't think he can, but I don't think he would deny the fact that reason has benefited enormously in his life. I think he would acknowledge that. Adam, to me, the Democratic convention seemed to have a better sense of life than the GOP convention, ironically. The GOP is becoming medieval thoughts. Absolutely. I mean, the Democrats, at least the Democrats who showed up at the convention, much better sense of life. The Republicans are nuts. I mean, did you see, I haven't talked about this in the news segments because it's been chopped up so much, but have you seen the this gubernatorial candidate in North Carolina, the MAGA, the Republican that Trump endorsed? I mean, this guy's a crazy nutcase. He's black, so he can get away with his black Republicans. He's getting away with it. But the guy was on all kind of sex websites, talking about having sex with children. He said, some people should be enslaved. He would be a slave master. He would buy some slaves if he could. This is a Republican. These people are nuts. The Republican Party is just insane. It's not an American spirit anymore. It's a wacko spirit. It's a spirit that believes in, these people believe in conspiracy theories. They're ripe for conspiracy theories. They follow Tucker Carlson and every other conspiracy theory promoter out there. It is an insane political party. This is what Trump has done to GOP. It never used to be. Under Reagan, at least it had a sense of life. Now that's gone. That is gone. Yes, and Democrats are better in that department, weirdly enough. Enric, on another show, I witnessed a good way for likes in creating a poll asking if you'll like the show. That's a good idea. All right, I need to get back to doing polls. I've forgotten about polls. I'll do more polls, and that's a good one to do. Eyal, tell the story. Which one?
Beirut.
Oh, my Beirut story? I think I've told this. My Beirut story. Okay, 1982, middle of a war. Israel has just occupied parts of Beirut, like the hilltops above Beirut. They haven't gone into West Beirut. But Israel's planning going into West Beirut. And West Beirut is full of, like Gaza, full of tunnels where the PLO is hiding. And I am at the time in military intelligence. And part of my job is to figure out the tunnels and to figure out where the PLO is hiding and where Yasser Arafat is in the tunnels. And so we're doing a lot of work trying to figure this out in Tel Aviv, in the Kiryat, not far from here. actually in one of the buildings. You know those buildings in Salona? You know those old buildings? I was in one of those. That was where I worked every day in military intelligence. And anyway, we had a source in Beirut who knew the tunnels, who knew what the tunnel system was, who could give us a lot of intelligence about the tunnel system. So, what frustration? I don't know what they're talking about. All right, so they asked my commanding officer and myself, they asked us to go up to Beirut and to interrogate this guy and get the information from him about the tunnel system so we could then come back and plan the invasion of West Beirut and take out the PLO, the terrorists that were there. So got up early in the morning, me and my commander put on our uniforms, threw a couple of AK-47s in the back of the Jeep and got into the Jeep and started driving. And past Haifa, you go up to Rosh Hanikra, there's a roadblock, we showed them the papers, they let you go, and you get to Tzor, and in Tzor there were traffic jams everywhere, and I'm driving an Israeli army Jeep, Arabs, Lebanese all around me, right? Driving around, and I'm driving on the pavements, I'm going nuts, I'm crazy, because there's this important interrogation I have to get to. And with just one Jeep, right? There's nobody with us. Like, this is insanity. Just two guys who don't know how to use an AK-47, really. I mean, we've shot them in training, but never used it on a human being. We're driving to Beirut. So go through Tzol, go through Tzidon, no GPS, right? This is pre-GPS. So we're playing with maps. Oh, take a right here, go up the mountain in Beirut, down to the headquarters where the Israeli, intelligence was based. We get out, and they say, okay, you have to, wear civilian clothes because you're going to do the interrogation. So we put on civilian clothes and we walk towards the facility where we're going to be interrogated. And suddenly, Arik Sharon, who was the defense secretary at the time, shows up and he says, no, I'll do the interrogation. Don't need you. Kicks us out. So we're like, all right, we got an evening. What are we going to do? So we're thinking, okay, we'll hang out here. Maybe we'll see the lights of Beirut or whatever. And we get a phone call from the base in the Kriya, and they say, you got to come back. Literally, we're going to spend all night planning the invasion of West Beirut, and you guys need to be here. We need you back. This is it. We're going in later this week, and there's no time to lose. Get in the Jeep, drive back. So we're running, getting our equipment, throwing the AK-47s in the back. I remember I didn't change my pants, so I left my civilian, my jeans, and I put on an army shirt on. So from the Jeep, you could only see the army shirt. And we started driving back from Beirut. Now it's nighttime. Now it's pitch dark. Two Israeli, I'm a first sergeant, he's a Seren, driving from Beirut in enemy territory, alone at night on the main road from Beirut down to the Israeli border and all the way. And every time we'd come to an Israeli checkpoint, there'd be checkpoints across the road, they would say, what are you guys doing? You're not supposed to drive at night. There's supposed to be a convoy with you. You're not allowed to drive in Lebanon without a convoy at night. And we would say, literally, we'd say, convoy's right behind us. Let us go. We need to go. The convoy's right there. Don't worry about it. And they let us through. And we drove. I mean, anybody could have tossed a grenade into us. They could have shot us up. Like that. It would have been nothing. And I drove like a maniac. I mean, I always drove like a maniac until recently. But then I was like 20. So I really drove like a maniac. And it was a military Jeep. And I wore a uniform. And the Lebanese would just have to clear the roads for me. And it was insane. It was literally insane.
You met Arik Sharon?
I met. Arik Sharon told me, in his way he would do it, right? He had that voice. תעזבו, אני מתחקר אותו. And then, I'm going to do it. Don't worry. So I saw Arik Sharon and he spoke to me. I didn't meet him. But we were, so I think my unit realized Israel was going to Beirut before Begin knew Israel was going to be ruled. Because we were basically providing intelligence directly and maps. We were doing maps, because again, no GPSs in those days. So we were doing maps off of aerial photographs, minute by minute maps for the advancing forces. And so we were being asked for routes into Beirut before the forces got there. As the forces are moving, Begin didn't find out Israel was going to Beirut until they got there, right? I mean, Alex Sharon completely deceived him and lied to him. That's why he had to resign later on. Completely deceived him and lied to him, about the war. But we knew almost from day one that the forces were going to Beirut, and prepared all the plans and everything for it. I have other stories about how screwed up the Israeli military is, but anyway, that'll cost you more money. Tessa asks, are Americans embarrassed of being American? I could meet a 10th generation Irish, Italian, Scandinavian, and they still won't say they're American. Really? Who won't say they're American? I don't think that's true. Americans always say they're Americans. I can't relate to that, Tessa. I mean, everybody I know from anywhere, even first generation people call themselves Americans. Americans seem to be proud of calling themselves Americans, and the problem is they don't know what being an American means. They don't know its significance. They don't know its meaning. But I don't think they're embarrassed by it. Lucinda was watching my girlfriend's college class with her. Her teacher excused advocates of eugenics during the progressive era because, quote, it wasn't a pseudoscience back then. Any thoughts, Yaron? God. I mean, even Darwin was tempted by this. So you could argue that they were thinking, at least in Darwin's case, I think he was more thinking aloud. And I don't think there was enough understanding. But no, I mean, to literally start divvying people up based on eugenics and not recognizing what makes us human, our rational faculty, and that everybody has it. I think by the early part of the 20th century, people knew that. So I would not make excuses for the eugenics program. And look, they're progressives. So these were the people who supposedly cared about human life. They were advancing human progress. But really, they were horrible Hegelian, Kantian, they were really, really bad people, bad thinkers. And this is one manifestation of that, the eugenics. WCZN says, will it work? What? I'm not sure what will it work. Yes, it will, he says, the super chat. It did work. Oh. I'm getting money from you commenting on your own super chat questions. This is good. I like this. Sound familiar, Yaron? Wandering into a church in Italy, and there is Michelangelo just sitting there. Yes. Is it the same church in Rome? Is it Michelangelo's Jesus with a cross? God, that was quite an experience. You go up to the statue and you say, this is different than anything else in this room. And this looks like it's significant. And the plaque is hard to find and hard to see, but you have a sense that this is like something, something important. And then you look and, God, this is a Michelangelo. Yeah, pretty amazing. WCZN, having seen much art in Rome and Naples, I feel different. It's like my baseline emotional state is more positive, good feeling. Excellent. That's great, WCZN. That's exactly the impact of great art. And yeah, Rome and Florence and Naples, man, I mean, there's a few places in Naples I haven't been to that I've seen only pictures of the sculptures inside. But now I'm very, very, very eager to get to Naples. I've seen the Naples Museum, which has some amazing Roman and Greek sculpture, and a lot of stuff from the city that Mount Vesuvius, the city that got crushed by the volcano. Pompeii, thank you. Pompeii had some well-preserved sculptures, but there's some places in Naples I've just seen pictures of the sculptures there that are just spectacular, and that's definitely on my list of places to go very, very soon. Oh, Lucinda with 50 euros. Thank you, Lucinda. The excusing eugenics came after talking about robber barons, and she talked about mail and shopping catalogs with a more judging tone than she did about eugenics. Worst thing she said about eugenics was that it was problematic. God, that is so pathetic. I mean, yes, they hate the businessmen, they hate innovation, they hate progress, but eugenics, that's problematic. These professors are really evil, really, really horrible. So, yeah, eugenics is the evil. Robber barons is a lie, thorough, systematic lie. Robber barons are heroes, the heroes of capitalism, the heroes of American industrialization, the heroes of America. They are the people who built America, literally built it. So, God, that is... Ruby Mins, love the show. Just watch Rand in Red with Donahue, sharing her with my 82-year-old father. Great interview. It was a great interview. She basically predicts alternative to oil cars. Have you covered that interview? I haven't covered it explicitly, but yeah, all their interviews are great, but the Donahues are all good. Donahue I'll always remember him positively because he interviewed Ayn Rand and gave an opportunity to speak. Oh, I will mention this. This is just a fun thing that happened to me today. I was at the gym this morning, like lifting weights and getting in shape. And this guy walks up to me in the gym in my hotel, but it's a gym that you can buy a subscription to, so people from the community, I guess, come in. It's right in the tech center of Herzliya, right where all the tech companies are. This guy comes up to me and says, "You're Yaron Brook. I watch all your videos. You're great. Thank you." And he shakes my hand and he walks off. I mean, if you're listening, cool. That was like, you made my day. That was so cool. I love it when people do that. And I told that to my wife, and she said, "Yeah, you're a mini celebrity. You're a little bit of a celebrity." And that's true. I'm a mini celebrity. You can think of me as that. All right, I think one more question came through. Let's see. Hunter, thoughts on actor Nicolas Cage? By the public, he is either panned or praised in a patronizing way for his anti-naturalistic style. He's so bad, he's good. He has been explicit about his rejection of naturalism. God, how does this go on? I've read that among other actors he highly regarded. Your favorite actor's favorite actor kind of thing. He said during an old Oscar speech he hopes he can fast forward to the future of acting. I like Nicolas Cage. I don't always like the movies he's in, so he hasn't been in a lot of movies where I've loved him, where I've loved the movie, but I almost every movie I like him. And I think part of that is that he is not a naturalistic actor. He is, in many respects, over the top, but in a positive way, in a healthy way, in an engaging way. And I just watched his movie Pig, which is not one of my favorites, but he's brilliant in it. He's really, really good. He's engaged. The only reason I watch that movie is to watch Nicolas Cage. It's not that interesting otherwise. And it's got a horrible philosophical, well, it's got a very mixed theme. Part of it's horrible and part of it's good. I've liked him in Face Off. You remember Face Off with John Travolta and him? It's a stupid action movie. But John Travolta and Nicolas Cage are brilliant in it. They're both really, really, really good actors in it. I'm sure there are other movies I've liked him in that I can't remember. Raising Arizona, that was one of his early movies. But a lot of his movies are depressing when he tries to be serious, and they get depressing like Pig. But Pig has an element of a positive philosophical theme, which I talked about in the show once before. So I agree with you. Yeah, thumbs up to Nicolas Cage. He's a good actor, and I wish he made more good movies, heroic movies. I'd love to see him as a hero. He doesn't play a lot of heroes. Like, you know, he's good in Raising Arizona, but Raising Arizona is a dumb movie about dumb people, about stupid people. I don't like movies about stupid people, right? All right. Thanks, guys. This is my last show from Israel, I hope. There is a possibility that I can't fly out tomorrow, and then maybe I'll rent a place at WeWorks and do my show from there because the connection is much better here. But hopefully this is my last show in Israel this round. And I will probably try to do one show from Madrid and then back home. And then I'll see you back home. So thank you, everybody. Thank you to all the super chatters. Really, really, really appreciate it. Thank you, Armin, for getting us off there with $200 and John for $100. That's great. Thank you for everybody else as well. And I will see you all sometime later this week. Oh, Jesper asked, how can people say Kant and Marx were knowing of their own evil? Didn't they think their ideas were good like altruists do today? I don't know that they were completely conscious, but Kant was so brilliant, and the way he structured a philosophy is so destructive that you get a feeling that he knew what he was doing, that he knew he was unleashing nihilism on the world. I don't think Marx did. I don't think Marx was that sophisticated. So I don't think Marx actually had knowledge of it. He evaded. That is, he had some knowledge of it. It was accessible to him. But I don't think it was conscious knowledge. Okay, quickly, Raphael. Quote, art is inextricably tied to man's survival, not to his physical survival, but to that on which his physical survival depends. I really don't understand how art is a matter of life or death. Well, put it this way, and I'll give you the short answer, and again, this is a topic for a whole show. What is a matter of life or death is the health of your conscious faculty, the health and ability to use reason and use your conceptual mind. That is an issue of life or death. And yet, your ability to use your conceptual mind, your ability and motivation to stay connected to reality and to be thoroughly and systematically rational is tied to your experience of art. If you reject art, if you reject that experience, you will not be living a fully conceptual life. Your mind will not function to its best, and in that sense, you've chosen death over life. Life means optimal. Life means best. Life means making the most of. And that's art certainly is what helps you do that. All right, everybody, time to go. I will see you all sometime.